Have array list, write a function array list as a parameter and removes as parameter and removes all the strings from array list that has even length. Um, everybody clear on what we need to do, what kind of function we need to write? So we have array list, so let's create an array list of string data type. And that would be the list equals to new array list, and list has dot add, and the add would be okay, sorry, add function, and we're going to be adding. Let's do it names again. So we do Blake list dot add and list dot add. All right, so we have what, 6 names. So once, and we're going to call the function. We're going to be doing remove even, and we're going to pass in the list. And after the function, it goes through the function, which names will be deleted, or how many names will be deleted. 3 names will be deleted. So 3 names would be Vlad would be deleted, Sage and Zach will be deleted because those are even letters, even numbers of letters in that name. And Blake has 5, Usman has 5, and Pedro has 5, so those are odd. So only 3 of them will be deleted, but that would be Vlad, Sage, and Zach. So how would we get started? So you guys need to help me write this. How would we get started? Public static, and we're going to do public static void, remove even length, and array list of string data type. That's a parameter, and we're just going to call it that. So we have a static method. Remember, this is not an object class. So every method that we write inside the main class, that would be the static method. Why do we have a return? So one thing I don't think we covered, maybe we have covered it, but why do we have a void? So we're making changes to the list. Why are we not returning that list? Does anybody know? Remember, list is coming in, we're making changes to it. Why aren't we returning that list after we make changes? So we are only editing what is already there. So with array list or any data structure that you're going to be creating, even in the next class, what happens is this is not primitive data type. So there is, try to write it down. So prim, and what is one example of primitive data type? Int is primitive data type. Long is primitive data type. Char is primitive data type. Boolean is primitive data type. Yes. And this list is actually a data structure, right? So these right here, they're not stored in memory. So what it means is when you pass something to the function, it makes a copy of it. So when primitive data types are passed to a function, it makes a copy of it, and this is how it works. So let me actually write a function. So public void and change, and it will be int n, that's the primitive data type. And then we also have, let's do public static void change, and this one we're going to pass in string list. So I'm going on a tangent right now, so we'll get to the function in a minute, but I do want to cover this topic briefly, even if you have covered it before. So we have this function change n, we have change list. So now what we do is int m equals to 10, and all we're going to do inside this function is we're going to do n equals to 50. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to do name list dot set. Remember, set is overriding something inside the list, right? So we're going to do set, and we're going to change index 0, which is Blake. So we're going to change it to, what else do we have new names here? Gabriel. So we're going to change the name here, and we're going to change the value of n here. So all we're doing is we're modifying whatever the parameters coming in. So now we have change n. I'm going to pass n m right there, and we're going to do print sum.out.println, and we're going to print the value, and we're going to do the same. So we're going to print the value of m before calling the function and after calling the function. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to copy this. Value of list before and value of list after. And here, the function we're going to be calling is change list. And we're going to pass in the actual list. We're going to print the list. So anybody confused about what we just did? So we have an int value and we have a list, right? We wrote two functions. We're modifying both of those two. And there, this is the primitive data type, and this is the data structure. When m comes in here, that becomes this right here. We're changing the value of whatever the parameter is to 50. And here we're getting the list. We're modifying the list and changing the value of index 0 to Gabriel. It's supposed to be Blake, but it's Gabriel. So if you run it, what would be printed here? Oh, well, before we do that, what would be printed here? What value of m would be printed? What about at line 25? What value of m would be printed at 25? 50. So this is where the primitive data type and data structures are different. So this, both of those two value would be 10. Before and after, m is 10. Even though we changed the value of n, it is still 10. Because when you pass primitive data type to a function, it makes a copy of it and sends that value. But when you send the data structure, it does not make a copy. It sends the whole list as it is in memory. So when you make a change in memory, this list is affected also. So let me draw that out. So we have m is equals to 10. Then we're calling the function. So when we call the function, what we do is we make a copy of this. So we do n equals to 10, and that's where this comes in. And now we modify this to 50. This value is not affected at all because we made a copy of it. Even if we change the name this to m, it still makes a new m copy, and the scope of this m stays in the main function, and this m would be stayed in this function. So now when we create a list, which is one of the data structure, right? So when we create array list, this is pointing to what was it, Blake, and then what was it, and so on, right? So the whole list is there. It's pointing to that memory location right there. When you pass it to a function, all you're doing is you're doing name list here. Send this pointer. You're not making a copy. So once this Blake was changed to Gabriel, once it was changed in the function Blake to Gabriel, this list is affected also, even though we only made a change to this list. It does not make a copy. So yeah, so now we have m, right? M equals to 10. That's great. Now we're calling a function. So we're calling a function in line 24. We're passing m. As soon as we pass m, this right here, what happens here is we create a copy of it. So we do n equals to m, which equals to 10. So we make a copy of it, and now we have n. So this step right here, this is just a copy. So we're making a copy. This goes away after we make the. So now m equals to 10, n also equals to 10, but the memory location for both of those two primitive data types are different. So now when you go into the function and we do n equals to 50, it goes, okay, there you go, n equals to 50, you're good. We change that memory location. Then we print m here again in line 25. M is still 10 because we made a copy of it. Now we do the same thing with list. So we do list is pointing to Blake and my name, and then the Sage, or whatever the list is, right? So it's pointing, it has a pointer pointing to that in memory location. Then at line 28, when we pass the list to that function, it does not make a copy. So what we do is we do name list, and that also has a pointer, and that pointer would be pointing to the same memory location. Remember the memory location when we try to print array without a toString or anything like that, it gives you the memory location. That's what this pointer is representing, the memory location of that list. And now when we come at line 40 and try to make a change to the list that's coming in as the parameter, we cross the Blake off because that's what we were modifying, and we write. So now, remember, both of those two are the same list. We made a copy of the pointer. So once the name list has been changed, that means the list itself was changed also. Any questions, concerns about this? So now if you wanted to make change, I'm going to clear the drawings. So if you wanted to make the change in M and whatever this is, we would need to do a return type. So we would need to do a return of integer, and in here we would do return, and to M to take an effect, we do M equals to that. But for the list, we don't have to do that because that is effect. Now if I run it, M would be 50 on the second. All right, so I'm going to get rid of these two functions also and go back to our original task. All right, so we don't have a return type. We have a list that's coming in. That is the same list that's right here. And what do we need to do? Remember, our task is to remove all strings from array list that have even length. For loop. We need a for loop. Remember, any array or list, anything that you have, you need a for loop to go through it. So we need a start position. So we have int equals to something, and then we have a condition, a stopping point, and then we have an iteration, right? Something like this. What is the starting for 0? We start at 0. As the index, we need to go through the whole list. We need to check each element, so we can start at 0. And when are we gonna list dot size? List dot size like this. Or remember, we need a condition. I is less than for loop to go through the whole list. That would be it. And what happens inside the list? I'm sorry, inside the for loop. If statement, check the size. So we have if statement to do something, and what are we checking the size of? That get I. That's that will return the value of it. So if you do index at 0, list dot get I, and that would give us Blake. And what do we need to check? Or how can we check? Dot size equals 6. Or remember, we need to check even, right? So it's not always going to be 6. So mod, we can use mod. So we can do dot size. It doesn't have a function dot size, but I think it has a function dot length. So it checks the length, and whatever the length is, we're going to mod it by 2. And then we need to compare that with something. To check something is a number is even or odd, how can we check equals to 0? If it equals to 0, that means it is even number, and that's what we're looking for. If it is an even number, we need to do something, right? So the other way you could have done that would be string name equals to list dot get I, and then you can do name dot length equals to. Either way would a thing would work. All right. So what happens when we find the length to be 0? Oh, I'm sorry, length to be even. List dot remove. We're going to do list dot remove that index. We're going to remove it. And do we need else or anything like that, or we just skip over it? So we only do something if the length is equals to even, and I minus minus. Why do we need I minus minus? Garrett. Anytime you remove something, so you can recheck the index, right? So index will change. Everything shifts over by 1. So we have, let's say we have letters. This is the array list, and so on, right? So now if I remove u, that means everything shifts over by 1, right? So now this becomes 0, and this becomes 1. And then if you don't decrement, then that means we're incrementing. So we did 0, and then we're going to skip S and go to M. That's why we need I minus minus. Are we missing something? All right, so that's the function we're going to call, and we're going to print the list before and after. So we're going to do system dot out dot println, and we do list before. So let's run it and see if it's working. And before list shows as Blake, Usman, Zach, Sage, Pedro, Vlad. And when it goes through the function, we don't have anything even. We only have odd names. Let's go and write one more function. So we're going to do write a function that would double the list. Parameter equals to ArrayList string, and then we have example would be we have a list and then blank page, and we have what other thing? We have bedroom, something like this. And after it goes through the function, the list looks something like this. Bedroom, like this. So it would double the list. It's not going to copy the whole list and add it at the end. It's going to just duplicate all the items. So how would we get started? So any question that you start working on, make sure you actually understand the question, what they're asking you to do. I've had a lot of times when I was doing internship interviews, I would give them a question on purpose and leave something out, and they would take the pen and start writing on the whiteboard. 15 minutes into them writing it, and they were like, "Oh, what do you want us to do at this?" So that means they didn't actually understand the question. They just wanted to get started on it. So make sure you understand the question first. And the question I give in the internship interview, that could have been done in like 5 minutes, right? But if you don't understand the question, then you're just confused, sitting there confused. So make sure you understand the question first. Is there anybody who is confused about the question? What we need? Public, static. Let me copy the header. We'll copy this from the chat. All right. So we have double list and we have static, void, a list comes in and it's still a string list. What do we need to get started? Loop through the array. Loop through the array. There would be a for loop. And for loop, we need I starting position, and then we need condition to stop the loop, and we have an iteration. And starting, I'm assuming is going to be starting at 0. So we need to go through the whole loop array. What would be the stopping position? I, so it gets to the end. Yep. So I is less than list.size, like before. Perfect. So you got a loop. We go through the loop. So what happens inside? So remember, we need to double the list. The first element we need to add it again. Should we increment I by 2 since we're adding it? So now what's going to happen is, remember, this is 0, this is 1, 2, and 3, right? That goes for upper one also. So once we add it, we duplicated something, then we need to, that means everything was shifted over by 1. So we add something here. So that means all these are shifting over by 1, right? It makes a space for it. So if you go from 0 to 1, that means we're looking at the same name again. So we don't want to go increment by 1. We want to increment by 2. And then when we add Blake here, then we still want to increment by 2 to get to this point. And then once we add Sage, we need to increment by 2 again to get to this point. Because if you're incrementing by 1, that means we're stuck on the same name. We'll keep adding it again and again and again. Does that make sense? So yeah, good point. We need to increment by 2. And how can we do that? I plus equals 2. So how can we double the list now? So we get the name. So we have the first name, we have string, name equals 2, and we could do list dot get at index I. We save that name at index 0. The first time we make a copy of Usman. And then what happens? Conditional, what would be the condition? Let's start at. So maximum, I don't think we would need a condition, remember? So we need to do this for all of them. Before we needed a condition because we're looking for even length only. But this one, we actually need to copy all of them. So I don't think we would need a condition. Well, if we need a condition, we'll come back. So we know we need to add something, right? So we need to add Usman, something like this, or name that we just stored. But this right here, where would that go? If you just leave it at that, yeah, so it'll go all the way at the end. We don't want to do that. We want to increment, add it right next to it. So how can we do that? I name like this. Yeah, list add. I is the index, and we're going to add it wherever it is, and we add the name as a name plus 1. So remember, name is a string, so we don't want to add any one value to. Or we could do is we can add 1. I think, but both of those two cases would work the same way, because if you're at index 0 and you added index 0, that means this will shift over by 1, the old one, and you insert it here, but you still skip 2. But if you're index 0 and you do I plus 1, that means you're inserting it here and you still skip over by 2. So yeah, I plus 1 or I itself, I think both of those two would work. Are we missing anything else? Will this work? Let's test it out. I think there's one thing we may be missing. We'll come back and look at it. So we're clear all the drawings. So list before and list after. I'm calling the function double list. I'm passing that list here. And it comes in here and runs this for loop to add all the values. So let's test it out. Yep. So it is working. So you have Blake, Usman, Zach, Sage, Pedro, blah, blah. So we have this right here, and that is still working. Yep, so that is working. So that we needed something else, but we don't. I just wanted to check it with odd numbers of elements in there. and it's working for odd number also. 44, we have time for one more, I think. So let's switch it around. So we've been using string list, and let's gonna switch that to integer. Why is this not working? Creating an int list, array list, but it's not working because int is, well, we can change that to integer object data type, and then it would work. All right, so let's create a list of integers. We need a list dot add. We'll add random numbers. List dot add. We do 10. List dot add. We do 9. All right, so we have an integer list. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write a function that would delete a number from the list. The list given the range. So parameter would be, we have the array list of integer. That's the parameter. Then we have int parameter of the value, what we need to delete. Then we have int start position and int end position. So we have a list. I don't want to write the whole list again, so we'll do this one. Let's say we're trying to delete, we'll add 9, right? So we have something like this. And this start position would be the index start position. Let's say they give index of 2. So it would start here and go to index, whatever this is. That would be the end position. And the value in this case would be 9. We're trying to delete 9 from it. And the list would be this right here. So we have a list. We have 5, 10, 9, 15, 9, 1, 91, right? So now they pass in starting position index 2, all the way up to starting position, what is that? 2, 3, 4, 5. Starting position, end position is 5. So index 5 start position going up to 9, and they want to delete value of 9. So these two values would be deleted. So this is the start, this is the end, and this is the value. Any questions, any concerns? How we need, or what needs to be. So start and end is the range of what, because we're not going to be using the whole list now. We have the range, we need to work with the range. We're given the value, we need to delete that value within that range. The range is 5 to 9, and we delete, the value is 9, so we delete this one and this one. So we have Garrett, we have public static, I'm gonna copy that. And we have public static void, and we have delete range, we have start and end. And remember, these 4 are the parameters. So we have start and an end, we still need 2 more. First one would be the array list itself. It's an integer list. And then we need int value. That means what needs to be deleted, right? So we need to delete this value from this range. So where would we get started? How would we solve that? So I had an idea for a for loop, but I did not finish it. That's okay. For loop, we need some kind of for loop. So that as a for loop, I'm going to copy that. And we'll get started from there. Oops. All right, so a for loop, we have a starting position, we have an ending position. That's great. So we have a start and an end. They give it to us, right? And we increment by 1. If you need to change it, we'll come back and change it. So remember, we're not going through the whole list. We're only going through the list from the start and an end position right here. And then what goes inside the for loop. So remember, we're trying to delete a value. They're giving us the value, right? We're not deleting all the values. We're only deleting the value. Yeah, so we need if statements. I'm going to copy your code, Garrett. So we're going to do copy. And we need if statements. And we need get list equals value. So we need some kind of list dot get I, right? So we need to get the index, get the value at this index. That's whatever the starting position is. And we're going to compare that to the value that's coming in as a parameter, right? So if that equals to this, what do we do? So the value that needs to be deleted, we found it inside the list. What happens then? List.remove I. List.remove I. I plus plus. We have I plus plus already, right? Do we need another one? We're removing it. So where would you put that I plus plus? Or do we need to do I plus plus? So remember, when we were adding it, that's when we needed two I plus plus, right? So we were incrementing by two, but when we were removing it, we do I minus minus. Do we need that here or do we don't need that here? We need I minus minus in this case, since we are only deleting in the range. I think we would need I minus minus. So let's do an example. So let me draw it out. So we have, let's say we have 5, the list is 5, run a bunch of random numbers, right? So now this is the list, and then the range is something like this. The range starts from here and goes all the way to here. So the range is what is 0, 1, 2, 3, so 4, going all the way to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 4 and 9, right? That's the range, that's the start, and that's the end. And when you need to delete, value is 5. And you need to delete 5. So we start here, we delete, we check for 4 equals 5. No, that's not the case. We don't go inside the if statement, we increment, we go to the next value. So we're here now. We check 5, list.get I 5 equals 5. That is the case, right? Then we remove that value. So we remove this. So now remember, everything now is shifting over by 1. And once we remove it, we do I plus plus, that means our cursor now is at 8. If this was 5, we just skipped it. So every time we do remove, we need I minus minus. So we need I minus minus. So once, so let's, is that it, or do we need anything else? We have to tell it the number of remove, number to remove. What do you mean, Blake? How does it know we need to remove 9? Up until 9, right? So that's where the loop ends. So you want to end the loop right there. This might be equal, less than, or equals to the end. That's where the loop ends. So the loop is not going to the whatever the size of the list is. The loop ends at end. That's how we know. So I see a minor fault in this. So what's happening right now? Let's say we deleted this 5, right? And now everything shifts over by 1. Everything is shifting over by 1. Everything is shifting over by 1. Now this 9 index is this now. It doesn't end here, it ends here now. Because everything shifted over by 1. And now the loop is going up until then. If you do end plus 1, that means we're incrementing end again. So now the end is here. The end, remember, everything shifts over. We need to keep the end at this level. It doesn't have to be 9, but we need to keep it at this level. It doesn't matter how many values we delete. So once we delete something, we do I minus minus. And what do we need to do with the end value? Break. So if you break it, it'll just get out of the for loop, right? So if we have other values to process, then it's not going to work. We can do n minus minus. So if you do n minus minus, that means end will move back one place. Since everything is shifting over, we'll keep it at the place it's supposed to be at. So n minus minus would work. And that only happens if the end, as soon as we remove something, the end will keep changing accordingly. So if we need to delete all the values, then the start and the end would be the same value. So we're going to do delete range and then pass in the list. Then we need to pass in the value, let's say 5. And then we're going to pass in the start position. I'm going to stay with this right here. So we're going to do start as 4 and end as 9. And we'll create a list just like this. So we have 5, we have 9, then we have 1, then we have 5, then we have 4, then we have 5, and then we have 6. Copy this. 6, we have 8, 4, 5, 5, and we have 6, we have 2, 5, and then we have something like this. So same list here, and this end would be changing accordingly. Value is 5, value is 5 right here. Start is 4, and end is 9. So we got to make sure this 5, 5 right here, only one of them is deleted. This one is deleted. So I'm gonna run it and keeping this one, well, this one's supposed to be deleted, right? How can we delete this one? So this 5 is deleted, 4, 5. There's supposed to be 5 here. This one is deleted, but this one needs to be also deleted. How can we fix that? Remember, the range was starting from here, going all the way to here, 4 to 9. That was the range. And then if that is the range, we need to delete this 5 and this 5. But this one is not deleted. How can you fix that? Any suggestions, questions? So right here, right? Remember, we're doing I is less than end. That means it will stop one before it gets to the end. But if you change that to equals, then it'll include the end value. If you run it to the range, was this, and all the 5s inside that range is deleted. So like the break, some of you lost focus during the break when you guys came back from the break. Right, so we have start, we have end, I plus plus. Note that equals the value, note that move I, okay. And it says index out of bounds. And what is your, how are you calling the function? Can you scroll up? So you have, so your list is different. I remember I went back and changed all the lists. So you don't have index 9 here. So you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values. So you're trying to end at 9. You need to add more values to the list. So you're getting index out of range. Now let me show you mine. This right here. So mine, I changed the list. Any other questions? Any other concerns? And so when we write this kind of function, we're just assuming that whoever is calling the function, the start and end range is within. And we're assuming that they're not making any mistakes, so we don't get any errors. All right, so let me show